I'm live and I'm blurry. Why am I blurry? I know why I'm blurry. It's blurry because of that. Okay. Still darker than I wanted to be, but that's because it's not that light out today. Um this is gonna be a double. This is gonna be YouTube live. It's gonna be YouTube live and hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hold on. This is YouTube Live. Welcome back to the University of Ghost. And also, it's going to be on the podcast Multi Monogamous, the Polygalaxy. So let me go ahead and get that started recording right now on my audio editor. Welcome back to Multi Monogamous, the Polygalaxy. You're also a part of the University of Ghost, where we dissect and talk about just so many things. In particular, this episode, this episode is going to be about indigenous, natives, aboriginals, um, and polyamory or polygamy, or just alternative styles of companionship. You know, sometimes those labels are good to use for various reasons as far as our engagements and interactions are concerned. And sometimes it just needs to be, you know what, just a different style of love, different style of passion, different styles of sexuality, different styles of growing together, of partnerships, right? Lifetime partnerships or temporary partnerships, depending on what type of subset of polyamory we're talking about. So yeah, now that I got the podcast running right now, those of you who are listening in on the podcast, just know that I am live also on YouTube. Excuse me. So bear with me if you kind of hear me taking little breaks, regarding the information that I'm pulling up, that I'm preparing to talk about. Just kind of bear with me. And also, I like to feast. I've been in radio for 20 something years, and you're told not to eat and drink while you're doing your interviews or doing your sessions and stuff like that. I don't care. I'm feasting. So I got me some miso. Um, mm, yeah, let me tell you. Let me tell you about this miso soup. Miso soup. I've been eating soups every day for like 2 weeks now. We are Let me chew my food before I start talking. Hold on a second. That's not what I wanted right there. Hold on. We are headed into no, excuse me. We're already in autumn. We're headed to the still beginning and middle stages of autumn. So it's not quite cool yet. It's late September, early October, basically. Always that warm streak, but I'm like, man, bring on the autumn. Now, autumn is my favorite season. So, but yeah, I've been eating miso soups, and this one right here, in case you want to know the ingredients, because one thing I like to do is feast. Um, it's miso, it's galangal. Galangal is an Eastern type of ginger, Asian type of ginger. It's not the same as ginger, but it's a cousin, closely related. But galangal, ginger, garlic, what else? Sesame seed oil, dandelion greens, some spring onions, and some tuna, and some quinoa. It's good stuff, man. Good stuff. If you want the ingredients and the measurements, rather, of the ingredients, you gotta find me and contact me, DM me or something. Let's get the promotions out the way, though. New book, new book. For those of you that don't know, there is a book out. There's a book out, and I wrote it. It's called Multi Monogamous, Three Ex Fiancés Later. It's on Amazon. Call your bookstores, so your bookstores will carry it. or if you have any groups and you want to have discussions. I love having broad challenges and discussions about companionships because there's just so much out there that we know and we don't know. So I just like having discussions. And ironically, with the book being titled multi-monogamous, it is definitely layered with monogamous experiences and um, my journey and et cetera, et cetera. But believe it or not, that's like the backdrop, man. Like the forefront of it all, the beauty, the beauty of it all is how I layered the front chapters, which basically center on uh, our indigenous and ancient connections to nature. Two things I've been saying lately is create new love and also using the word permission. Everything I do is all about permission. It's not about me giving you permission, but it's about me allowing you, excuse me, not allowing you, but letting you know rather that the ancients gave you the blueprint. They have given us permission to be whoever it is we want to be. And the more that you study thyself, know thyself, um, the more you'll begin to understand your true purpose and the core of who you are as it pertains to life in general, whether it's based upon mental health practices, physical health practices, dietary practices, educational practices, how you relate culturally, how you relate tribally, and in relation to what I'm talking about now, how you relate from a companionship point of view. They've given us the blueprint and the outline and the permission to be ourselves. You don't have to look anywhere else. We spend a lot of time being conditioned and indoctrinated by society, environment, parents, friends, school, teachers, religion, especially especially religion and traditions too. We were getting permission from others. That's the Pisces age, as I speak about sometimes. That's the Pisces age. But that's old news now. It's all about you learning yourself and you studying to show thyself approved and do the research and find out who you are. So yeah, multi-monogamous, man. So it's a really good book. It's different. It's different. It's not like everybody else's book. Um, we go back in history and we talk about the indigenous nature of companionships among many other things. So cop that book, Multi-Monogamous 3 Ex-Fiancés Later on Amazon. And also, you can find me on Instagram at multi-monogamous, and I'm on Facebook, but don't follow me. I mean, you can add me on Facebook, but I don't really indulge much in Facebook. But I'll talk to you, if you message me. And Cash App is El Rico Ramon, ELRECORAMON. Feel free to give me $100 or 200, whichever one you prefer. Just slide me 100 or 200. And if you can't do that, it's cool. Just buy the book. It's all good. Buy the book. All right. So now let's dive deep into this. As I always express on every episode I do on my podcast, especially, be willing to do your own research. All the information that I'm going to lay out on this particular episode regarding indigenous natives and alternative styles of companionship, this is the information I've studied. It's not factual. It's a truth or it's a half truth. So you got to be willing to do your own research. I'm not your pastor, I'm not your preacher. I am a teacher, but I am also a student too. And as a student who's forever learning, as far as my evolution is concerned, I have a lot to learn and I'm growing and I know a lot and I don't know an enormous amount more. So don't take what I'm saying as gold. Um, Take bits and pieces of it and utilize it for your own journey and your own experiences and see how it shows up in your world and your reality. All right. So always be willing to do your own research and study to show yourself approved. But we're going to talk about Eastern Woodlands natives. I really enjoyed what I was reading about the Eastern Woodlands. It was fascinating. The Wendat, Wendat. And I could be saying these names wrong, so forgive me for those of you who are a part of those cultures. Feel free to phonetically help me with that on the next run. But Wendat, Eastern Woodlands. I think we're going to talk a little bit about the Guale and the Pueblos. And for right now, we're going to center it on that. Let me just pour some water, and I will be ready to begin on that note. Okay, so take a little break, get your pen and paper out if you want to, and be ready to take some notes. All right, cool. Hold on one second. Okay. Um, Hold on a second. All right. I am ready. I'm ready. We're gonna start off with just so I give you my references. I try my best to always attribute because excuse me, it's not like I'm coming off the dome with this from myself. Even though these things feel right and it matches up with the core of who I am, which is why I find it so fascinating. That's based on me having this intuition, this intuitive feeling, this innate feeling. A lot of pieces of who I am that make me who I am is based upon my experiences, nature, intuition, genetics, DNA, what I like to call failures and success. So there's a number of things, but it's interesting. These things just show up; they just pop up in front of me. I don't even have to even struggle to go searching for it. Like I just come across it, and I'm like, man, there's a reason why I come across this stuff so easily. And that's also why I consider myself, to a degree, a historian of um, ancient cultures and indigenous cultures, and as it pertains to companionships and sexuality and mental health in particular. I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated. So we're going to start off with, and excuse me for not being able to share screens. It was like you need to download this application and blah blah blah, and I was like, I don't want no more applications clogging up my stuff. But I will at some point. I'll figure it out and I'll be able to share the screen. So, but for right now, let me give you the sites. So this first site is, hold on a second, is it's William and Mary. William William and Mary University. So it's wn.edu. And basically, if you want to type it in to kind of like do your own research and read for yourself, it's called Sexual Moors, Mores, among the Eastern Woodland Indians. Sexual Moors among the Eastern Woodland Indians. Dissertations, thesis, and master's projects. It's coming out of 1984. Whew. Seemed like yesterday and at the same time forever ago. So, and before I start on this, sidebar, what's really interesting is something that I really want to find more information on. I've been able to find a little bit regarding the Mississippian culture, the mound builders. But you'd be surprised, there's just not a lot of information out there regarding or addressing their particular styles of companionships, um, mental, even from a mental health, like, trying to get a feel for understanding for their mental health practices and the different phrases or words or labels they use to address these things. Like, there's just not a lot of archaeological evidence, and it's really disturbing, because the mound builders are huge, and they are an enormous a part of the makeup of the northern hemisphere of the Americas. And pretty much they cover the southern corridor of the northern hemisphere. I'm talking about Louisiana, I'm talking about Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, even Serpent Mound, in Ohio, some of the Midwest. So Mississippian culture is huge. I mean, it's like, it's almost like saying you don't have enough information on cultures along the Nile River, like, Kemet and Kush. Like, how is that? That's weird. So I don't know. Either they, either they don't feel it's important to come up with information regarding the Mississippian culture, or they're just trying to hide stuff that they don't want to expose for various reasons. And I have my opinions and thoughts on that, but we'll save that for another episode, right? It's like it's getting darker and darker outside. It's only like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All right, so sexual mores. Let's go ahead and dive into that. Let me show you. Let me read to you some of what I was reading that um, has a lot of impact. Not that it changed the way I see anything, but it added to how I see things in particular. Right. So I'll start by reading this. Different tribes define their sexual norms in different ways. Normal sexual behavior in one tribe may have been deviance in another. Often, tribal lifestyles offer explanations for certain taboos and beliefs. Sexual customs were not static. However, sexual attitudes began to change after European contact. That paragraph right there is just, it's just so powerful. There's just so much in that paragraph alone. Let's start with the word deviance, right? Let's start with that word. Let's look it up. Let's look it up right quick. The definition of deviance, or it's probably going to be deviant more than likely. Deviant, departing from usual or accepted standards, especially in social or sexual behavior. That's deviant. Again, departing from usual or accepted standards, especially in social or sexual behavior. That's powerful because right there, it identifies how humongously non monolithic we are. And that includes us in general, whether I'm talking about us as a complex amount, quantitative amount of cultures or tribes. Because even though we're all lumped in one and called Americans in America from a modern sense or whatever, there's always been thousands and thousands of tribes, always, and and just singling out quote unquote black culture or melanated culture, indigenous melanated culture, even we are highly non-monolithic. So to read something like that, let me read it one more time. Normal sexual behavior in one tribe may have been deviance in another. That makes it quite clear from that perspective based on this isolated article regarding the eastern woodland tribes. Makes it quite clear that no one tribe was the same. And when they would come across each other in particular, there was a narrative that there was going to be some differences, whether it's based upon sexuality, based upon companionship, and even though it didn't say it, I'm pretty sure there were a lot of differences based upon dietary practices, possibly um, different codes of ethics and morality, traditions, whatever the case may be. And I believe that's a big part of our issue in society today, whether it's just melanated culture or all of us in general as a peoples of the northern hemisphere, the Americas in particular. I would say it's like this all over, but with us, we just don't take the time out to acknowledge that it's okay. It's okay to be different. For whatever reason, this nation, our rhetoric, the way that we view reality, how we've been conditioned to see it is based upon one or the other. It's like there's got to be choice. And in choice, there only has to be two. There's no such thing as duality, or as someone I interviewed, I had a great interview with Zaleka Hepworth, Zaleka Clark Hepworth. And that's on the podcast also. And where we talked about pluriversity or plurality, which is similar to duality, which is, in short, it's basically um, two, three, four, or more things existing simultaneously at one time and all being right and wrong simultaneously. There is no right or wrong. There's this your perspective, and then there's that perspective, and then there's another perspective, then there's another perspective. And neither is wrong. Same thing when it comes to ethics and morality. I have my morality and my ethics, but you can't tell me what my morals and my ethics are, just like I should not tell you what your morals and your ethics are. We are non monolithic and we are highly tribal, but for some reason, not for some reason, for colonial reasons and indoctrination reasons and religious reasons, among many other reasons, I'm sure, we seem to think that we all should think and feel the same. And that's not correct. In a world of duality, maybe you would say that is correct. If that's how you see reality, again, that's your journey and that's how you see reality. Maybe you believe that there should only be one or two choices and that's it. But that's just not how it was in ancient times or from an indigenous perspective. From an indigenous ancestral perspective, we've always had many, many, many viewpoints on things because we've always had numerous tribal realities and perspectives. So that's just one aspect, and I ain't even started yet. I'm still covering the surface of what I'm about to talk about. But the other part that stuck out in that paragraph that was enormous to me, that was critical, probably more critical than that, is sexual attitudes begin to change after European contact. You're going to hear me say that probably a dozen more times, at least half a dozen. Sexual attitudes begin to change after European contact. European contact. Listen, y'all. Listen, listen, listen. If you do not understand right now, the travesty, the tragedy of European contact, you are going to know by the end of this episode how tragic it is to have been touched. And I ain't talking about physically, although that should be included. I'm talking about physically, I'm talking about emotionally, psychologically, um, metaphorically. Like to have been touched by Europeans has been just tragic to indigenous culture, to black culture, to melanated culture, to other cultures. And a lot of us, as such as myself, now I'm not the only one, but a lot of us, we are here to dismantle and strip and decolonize because it's just the amount of conditioning and indoctrination based upon European contact is just not proportionate. You know what I'm saying? It's out of proportion. It's out of whack, and we are steady trying to get this train back on the tracks. Let's move forward. I'm gonna take a drink of water. Hold on. Moving forward. So missionaries, alcohol, and disease contributed to the change of Indian sexual norms. Say that one more time because that's really important. Missionaries, alcohol, and disease contributed to the change of Indian sexual norms. Doesn't that sound familiar? Don't that sound familiar? Alcohol. What about the 80s era regarding the melanated community? Crack, cocaine, disease. We need to get started on disease. The amount of diseases that have been brought over here from European culture or others, in particular. Missionaries is interesting because I just look at missionaries as like a blanket word. I think missionaries covers religion, covers traditions, covers the school system. Bad, bad. In some cases, European standards, which were either adopted or imposed, were more strict than Indian norms. Than the Indian norms they replaced. I'm gonna read that one more time. In some cases, European standards, which were either adopted or imposed, were more strict than the Indian norms they replaced. In other, in other, where was I? Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. In other cases, the Indian norms required more physical and emotional restraint than European, as evidenced by the observance of abstinence during the first year of marriage. In situations such as this, the impact of European norms weakened Indian standards. There you go. You see it again regarding European contact. In situations such as this, the impact of European norms weakened Indian standards. European contact, man. Let's move on. In many cases, European contact changed tribal custom and Indians began marrying earlier, either because the introduction of European norms caused a weakening of Indian custom or the Indian population was utilizing early marriage as a survival technique, hoping to increase the number of children born to replace those tribe members lost to disease. All up in there, intertwined in there, you see the aspect of missionaries, disease, and alcohol. I told you at least half a dozen times you're going to hear me speak on European contact. Right there, you have European contact change tribal custom and customs. Then you have European norms caused a weakening of Indian customs. Like, sorry, I gotta take it. Sometimes I'm just mind blown. Like at the it makes me think of alchemy, right? It makes me think of like how an energy or chemical can move into a space and cause another chemical reaction or something to bust or blow or just totally change the dynamics of whatever content it is, the fabric of the chemical or the energy and frequency that was in this space is changed all the way 100% in totality because of another invasion of another chemical or frequency. Now I'm not about to go off and be too hard because I'm just reading what I'm just saying what I'm reading. You know what I'm saying? I'm reading to you what's coming off of this site. Point is, point is European contact regarding indigenous peoples all over, but in particular in the Americas, it caused a humongous shift and separation of customs and traditions and views on reality and the way we participated and engaged with one another regarding partnership, friendships, familial environments, everything, spirituality, everything. Let's keep moving. Um, and that was it for that particular site. Again, that was wm.edu, William and Mary, Sexual Moors of the Eastern Woodlands. Okay, now we're going to polygamy, native societies, and Spanish colonists. Let me see if I can find out where that is. Polygamy native. Doot, 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 doot. So that's coming out of JSTOR, JSTOR.org, Polygamy Native Societies and Spanish Colonists. Um, I like JSTOR, so it's always a good research site. You can collect a lot of information based upon different researchers that post their information that they've done research on. Let me check the audio right quick for the podcast. Everything sounds good. Okay, good. So now reading some of this. Let me expand this just a little bit so I'm not struggling having to go back and forth with my mouse. Hold on one second. Okay. So, Spanish missionaries saw the polygamous marriage models used by some indigenous Americans as one of the great evils to be rooted out. That's a very popular narrative regarding when they showed up on these shores. When they showed up on these shores, um, the audacity of someone to go to somebody else's place and tell them that their customs and ways of doing things is savage and barbaric, disgusting, deviant, not normal, not civilized. It's crazy, right? Spanish missionaries. And just to put emphasis on Spanish, I know sometimes people might attribute that to like Mexican. Keep in mind that Spanish is very, very broad, very vast. When you're talking about Spanish missionaries that showed up on these shores to create havoc, we're talking about Spain. We're talking about those Europeans in particular. Because by that time, when Spain was showing up over here, they had defeated the Moors, and they were looking to like take over everything. They was really big into, like other cultures, into taking over. Polygamy was important to both Guale, 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 and Pueblo societies, or Guale. Hope I'm not saying that right. I should have probably looked up how to say that. My bad, y'all. In these and many other Native American cultures, having many wives could give a leader ties to other nearby groups, as well as a wealthier and higher status household. Polygamy also allowed cultures in which captive taking was common to integrate women and children from rival groups into a household. Polygamy was part of the idealized vision, just as it was a rationale for colonialism for the Spanish and a basic part of social organization for the Gual or Guale. I'm gonna say it one more time. Polygamy was part of that idealized vision, just as it was a rationale for colonialism for the Spanish. Like colonialism is is a innate thread regarding Europeanism. Just like colonialism runs naturally in their blood, so did the way that we envision things regarding indigenous and ancient cultures. We had a norm, we had a set standard and a vibe that was natural to us. And then something that was natural to a whole other culture came in and eliminated that. And the irony, well, not irony, but the um, intrigue of it all, part of the intrigue of it all is that colonialism, this thing that was introduced to a lot of our ancestors, is for a lot of us is considered anti-natural, anti-nature, to some degree anti-spiritual. That's a whole nother subject. Let's move on a little bit. Let's move on a little bit. I Let me go to that site right quick. 'Cause I want to see if there was something else I wanted to pull out of that. Just bear with me one second. Hold on one second. Yeah, that was pretty much it for that. Again, that was polygamy, native societies, and Spanish colonists. Having more than one wife was an established part of life for some native peoples before Europeans tried to end the practice. I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna read this right quick, and then we'll move on. This is regarding like the Spanish Inquisition and stuff like that. And many times and places, monogamy and other forms of marriage have coexisted peacefully, as they're increasingly doing in the U.S. today. And this was written in 2021, April. But at other times, they've been part of dramatic conflicts. Historian Sarah M.S. Purcell describes particularly intense clashes of cultural attitudes toward marriage that played a role in two uprisings against Spanish colonial rule by native people: the Guale Rebellion in Spanish Florida and the Pueblo revolts in New Mexico. Yeah, Spanish. Purcell writes that Spanish colonists came to the Americas primed to be horrified by polygamy. Through the Reconquista, and Spanish Inquisition, it had been a rationale for attacks on Muslims and Sephardic Jews. So Spanish missionaries saw the polygamous marriage models used by some indigenous Americans as one of the great evils to be rooted out, as I already expressed before. And we'll move on. Um, yeah, again, you're just getting a taste, small taste of what it was like. And again, this is just based upon Eastern Woodland tribes. I'm not even talking about the thousands of other tribes that have been affected by European contact. You know, thousands, so much so regarding European contact. Let's move forward. This one is called For Native Americans, Sex Didn't Come with Guilt. For Native Americans, sex did not come with guilt. And that's coming out of, let me see if I can find the site for that. The site for that. I think I must have. Hold on one second. I'm gonna look up the site because I always want to make sure that I give you sources. Native Americans. Oh, here we go. Right here. Hold on a second. Okay, so yep, there we go. That's coming out of the fairobserver.com. That's fairobserver.com. So basically a site based upon independence, diversity, and debates. And again, this is titled For the Aboriginal People of North America, Sex Was Not Associated with Guilt. March 30th, 2015 is when this one was written or submitted, rather. So let's go ahead and do some reading right quick. Let me put it back on the video. Everything good? Let me make sure the audio hasn't stopped recording. Yep, still going well. Let me take a drink of water. Hold on a second. Had to take a bite to eat too. Okay, now we continue. Do I need to expand this to? No, we're good. Okay. People who belonged to your clan. People who belonged to your clan were considered related to you. People of your own generation you would address as brother or sister. That meant it was considered incest to have sex with or marry them. In a detailed study of the 18th century Wendat, one of the descendant groups of the Wendat and their linguistically and culturally closely related cousins, the people of the mountains, there were no marriages between people of the same clan. Again, there were no marriages between people of the same clan, despite the fact that they typically numbered between 500 to 600 people during the 18th century. To use a technical term, the people were still exogamous, which means marrying outside of the clan. That's another thing that um, is an extension of European contact. Again, the audacity to reframe certain habits and behaviors or traditions regarding indigenous peoples. So, oftentimes they would hear or see what we do, and immediately, from a European scope of mind frame, it would be perverted, inverted, reversed, reframed, and you know that's the way that it would be channeled through their mind. So they would look at something like that as perverted. Again, going back to the brother and sister thing. Now, don't get it twisted. That did happen at times in certain cultures and certain tribes, and I'm not here to judge on that. Not on this episode, anyways. Nevertheless, it wasn't always like that. As I just read, sometimes you just call somebody your brother and your sister because, like I said, they're from the same tribe, not from the same mother or the same father. Same thing with cousins, right? Um, incest goes back many, many, many thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? But that wasn't the case for this tribe in particular, as far as the Wendat were concerned. Let's move forward a little bit. Um, Going to the next page. That was all I. And if you just kind of you want like an idea of where the Wendat are located, that's basically North America, Quebec. I'm seeing here. Hold on, I got to sneeze. Excuse me. Let me see if I can. If there's anything else I need to pull out of this article in particular. Oh yeah, I do want to read this part. A woman's choice. Adultery happened. Adultery happened. That's something different. Hold on a second. Interesting, but there was a term for that in Wendat. But the person would have to be of a different clan. But where's the part about the woman's choice though? Oh, here we go. Here we go. The Wendat were a trading people, the men often canoeing a long distance to visit long established trading partners of other nations. They might have had marital partners there as well, as they would strengthen the social bonds between trading partners and nations. Early European recorders speak of such relationships in terms of male perspective, not even considering that young women might have had decision making authority in these matters. At the time, Aboriginal women generally had more say in mate choosing and disposing than did their European sisters. I'm sure that made Europeans mad too. Wendat attitudes towards sex were certainly much more open and free than were the attitudes to which the French coming over to Canada were accustomed. Nothing recorded in writing illustrates this better than a sexual ceremony of the Wendat. Um, this is the ceremony right here. In the country, there are also assemblies of all the girls in a town at a sick woman's couch, either at her request according to an imagination, vision, or a dream she may have had, or by order of the Oki shaman for her health and recovery. When the girls are thus assembled, they are all asked, one after another, which of the young men of the town they would like to sleep with them the next night. Sorry for how that is written, but that's exactly how that was written. Each names one, and these are immediately notified by the masters of the ceremony, and all come in the evening to sleep with those who have chosen them, in the presence of the sick woman, from one end of the lodge to the other, and they pass the whole night thus, while the two chiefs at the two ends of the house sing and rattle their tortoise shells from evening till the following morning, when the ceremony is concluded. Evening till the following morning. Poor, poor tortoise shells. That's a long time. It's interesting that the women, kind of going back to that right quick, how it said, when the girls are thus assembled, they are all asked one after another, which of the young men of the town, which would they like to sleep with that night. It's very similar to walking marriage in the Moshu culture. Moshu, which is Mosuo, Moshu, walking marriage, where the women invite a man over for the night. Come over here, and then you got to go. It's not like that always, but sometimes it is like that. Um, Now, I do want to make something clear too regarding various traditional ways. Let's also make sure we hold accountable to some of these things that certain tribes did. Some of these things I'm pretty sure, were considered horrific, and I'm pretty sure that there were young women and young boys in certain tribes. Because keep in mind, there were so many tribes, or yet there were young women and young boys in so many tribes that felt very uncomfortable and were very happy due to European contact to be, um, taken out of that certain tradition or to get out of certain tribes. So I'm sure it has its pros to a degree, not to go super, super hard left on European contact. That's just not what this particular episode is about. We're just talking about the negative effects of European contact. Uh, European contact regarding the pros is for a whole nother episode, another day, or for another podcast. When I'm doing these episodes, it really is about getting closer, getting closer to the good parts of who we once were, and not harming each other and not harming others. That's what I'm all about, and that's the angle that I'm always coming from. Again, when it comes to morality and ethics, it's subjective and relative. I'm sure there were tribes that were doing some crazy, wild, insane stuff, and they probably still are today. Maybe, I don't know. Um, but I'm talking about the positives, and that I'm uplifting the positives. So, um, yeah, the cons, the cons of tribal traditions for another day. Let's continue though. It is important to note that it was the young women that did the choosing, not the young men. This reflects the importance and respect given to women in Wendat culture. That's powerful, man. It is important to note that it was the young women that did the choosing, not the young men. Yeah. From a patriarchal point of view, I'm very sure that men was like, oh, we got to put a stop to that. Can't have no women being more powerful. Um, I think that's going to do it for that particular site. The name of the ceremony was Indaqandet, which literally means they are enveloped in sex. If you wished for the ceremony, you would say Tayindaqandentin, Tayindaqandentin, be enveloped in sex for me. The Jesuit fought to suppress this custom. By 1649, when the Wendat were on the brink of being driven out of their traditional territory, the most Christian of the communities refused to hold this ceremony. I bet they did. I bet they did. Um, and oh yeah, two more paragraphs because I got to read this one paragraph. It's very important to read. It speaks of several aspects of traditional Wendat culture. It seems to demonstrate that their publicly articulated attitude towards sex was one that it was something to celebrate, not constrain. And it suggests that female sexuality was something thought natural, not something to be controlled. The Wendat had no terms for innocence or guilt, so did not have those cultural. I don't know how they're writing this, but I'll read it how they wrote it. So did not have those cultural concepts to condemn female sexuality. I also want to read part of that again. It seems to demonstrate that publicly articulated attitude towards sex was one that it was something to celebrate, not constrain. Female sexuality was something thought natural, not something to be controlled. There were no terms in Wendat language for innocence or guilt. Wow. And that's another thing too, when we're talking about English language, which we got to keep in mind the origins of English language comes from it's Northern Europe. It's a Northern European language at its inception regarding the Germanic tribes. If you don't know about the Germanic tribes, you should know who they are because a lot of how you see reality, like everything you do, all the conditioning from a colonial perspective and point of view, a lot of it is via Germanic customs and traditions, via Rome also. Yeah, we Rome didn't fall all the way. We live in a modern day Rome, modern day um, um, viewpoints of the Germanic tribes. I say the reason why I say that because when you hear something, when you read something where it says a tribe didn't even have words for something, that should tell you something. Like we didn't even have words for certain things, but Europeans decided it was okay to come in and give us words and give us definitions for what we were doing and tell us it was bad or good, which is not good. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Oh, last paragraph I wanted to read. Last paragraph. Um, this was an Aboriginal society at the time of first contact. This is before white male fur traders sought compliant women among the people. Before gallons of alcohol were poured into the fur trade, before the Indian Act gave men power and took it away from women, before colonial oppression and poverty turned the Algonquin language family, word squaw meaning female or woman, took on the negative connotations of cheap brown whore, before residential schools taught Aboriginal peoples the meaning of sexual abuse. Whew. Again, that's coming out of fairobserver.com. It's about the Wendat and Algonquin. And it's called For Native Americans, Sex Didn't Come with Guilt. And I believe this will be the last site. Yeah. This one is from um, culturesmag.com. Excuse me, cultures. There's no E in that part also. CULTURSMAG, culturesmag.com. And I think Kim Tallbear, who is a renowned researcher, Kim Tallbear has added quite a lot to this part of the conversation. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed this. This one's called Polyamory Relationships, Part 1 of 3, Colonial Sexuality. And basically reading about how religion did not make us monogamous. All right. Let me get a drink of water right quick and a spoonful of my miso. My miso is cool right now. Hold on a second. Okay. Um, yep. Cleaning my teeth and everything. I'm not nasty with it though. All right. Polyamory relationships, part one of three, colonial sexuality. This part I'm reading is called Partnering Like Our Grandparents. Most people simply model behavior learned from family, religious beliefs, and the rules of the society in which they live. When pressed, one might say religion is the reason their family is one that models and promotes monogamous relationships. However, that may not be accurate. In part one of this series, we went back to the Bronze Age to examine how monogamy became normative in Western culture. Historian Stephanie Kuntz, I've heard of her before. I'd like to interview her. Explains how one's culture can shape the way they pursue romantic love. In ancient China, the word for love connotated a very socially disrespectable relationship. Falling in love before marriage in India was considered an actively antisocial act. Many of the globally mobile still carrying traditional ideas and practices that they bring into modern relationships. When you look at research on cross cultural romantic relationships, you get these very striking cultural differences, says Xiaoming Xu, PhD. The sorts of cross cultural differences that come out of self report questionnaires would suggest that Easterners, for example, really don't feel passion, really don't think about love as a positive thing. Dr. Shu's research compared what people reported about being in love and what their bodies demonstrated during brain scans. Shu examined the brains of Chinese, British, and American people reporting to be in love. What Dr. Shu found is in contrast to what Easterners reported in self surveys. The result is this: cross cultural differences cause people to alter how they think and speak about romantic relationships. The different ways that Easterners and Westerners view romantic love sometimes show up in relationships as the love struck Westerner or the dispassionate Easterner. Let's stop right there for a second. I think that that is really mind blowing to a degree. I'll start first by saying that I haven't studied Eastern culture to that degree yet to really um, co-sign on the lack of passion of Easterners. So I don't know. It had to be true. Also, keep in mind that Dr. Shu interviewed a certain percentage of people, and that doesn't make up totality. The East is full of billions of people, just like the West. So I'm not gonna say whether I agree or disagree with that, but I will say, I could see if that was true, I could see how that could be true. And the reason that I'll give for that is based upon my studies of ancient cultures. Ancient culture is, you know, is really highly based upon um, the aspects of spirituality and nature. Now, let's not say in nature, in nature, love is different. It's just different, how in addition to that, how we define love is very, very relative and subjective. Love means something different to everybody. I remember for a long time I thought love was First Corinthians, whatever that chapter is, 14, 16. I was like, oh, this is love. And now I don't define love that same way. That is a biblical interpretation of love, whether right or wrong, whether good or bad. That's that interpretation. But love is a very interesting concept of things and intersectionalities of things, regarding passion and um, frequency, vibrations, feelings, emotions, experiences. Like there's just so much involved, and I don't think not one person can just really say what love is, including myself. Which is why I tend to. I remember somebody asked me like, "What is love?" And I remember I gave them a response, and like they kept asking me, and I was like, kind of getting frustrated. Like, what are you asking me, man? And when I look back on that, you know, my response now is, I don't know. I don't know. I know I have a way of engaging and interacting with people, and somehow, some way, someone has told me that there's certain things that I might do that that's what love is, but I don't know if that's true. Nevertheless, um, going back, staying on subject, I'll go off. Staying on subject, a lot of Eastern customs and certain things, like they were just traditions that ordered the day. When you start looking at how civilizations were set up in the East, also, especially as it pertains to like marriage and a number of other things. Like there was very rigid laws and structures that definitely eliminated possibly something called love, whatever that may be, right? So I could see that. And now we're talking about the West, the love struck Westerner. You know, even our ideas of love is complicated to from the perspective of European contact. Going back to the Germanic tribes, going back to Rome, for example, you have the introduction of romance through Rome. You know, I I would say a lot of how we practice love and passion today is based on Rome. So, that idea of love, and then you have the concepts of the heart and Valentine's and these holidays and this mixture of capitalism and colonialism within the holidays, and that muddies up and blurs the lines of love, whatever that is. So I can see how the East would possibly see things differently than the modern West. I wonder, I'm willing to bet in that study, it doesn't take into consideration the indigenous West, the ancient West. I would probably argue that ancient Western societies and tribes in the Americas probably, possibly lacked that thing called um, love or passion. If that's true, that the East is like that or was like that, then yeah, I'm sure the ancient West was like that also. Um, and am I saying that the way that we love today is wrong? Nope. Again, going back to duality, don't try to pin me. Don't pin the tail on me. Nope. I say everything is a truth and a half truth. I'm not saying it's wrong how we interact and engage today. I'm just saying that the way that we do it is different than we did it in the past. And I'm saying that things were introduced to us, and we were conditioned to see things a certain way. Now, if you still love it, I love it for you. If you still want to identify yourself and operate in a certain manner regarding older traditions from Rome and the Germanic tribes, I love it for you. That's great. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just telling you what it is. This is what it is based upon what I'm reading, whether right or wrong. Let's move on. This is a really good part too. Ooh, we an hour in. Goodness, let me make sure my audio's still recording from my podcast podcast peoples. Oh yeah, we still in there. We still in there. But we about to wrap it up though. This should be the last part if I'm correct. How we became a monogamous culture. Yeah, this is powerful. Powerful. I told you Germanic tribes was going to show up. I told you. The key to understanding marriage versus pure The key to understanding marriage versus pure pair bonding is recognizing the role of a community in defining, sanctioning, and enforcing marriage norms. I'm going to read that one more time. That's a powerful sentence. The key to understanding marriage versus pure pair bonding is recognizing the role of a community in defining, sanctioning, and enforcing marriage norms. So, how exactly did humans transition to monogamy from more fluid and multiple relationships. Between 6 BC and 4 AD, Rome invaded Germania. This makes sense too because Rome fell in around 400 something AD. I think it was 475. Don't quote me on that. 470, 480 something. So, yeah, I can see how Rome invaded Germania because pretty much following after that, Rome was falling to partially to the Germanic tribes, Northern Europeans. The Roman term for the geographical region of North Central Europe, which is Germania. In Germania, the Germanic tribes, Teutonic, Cherusci, Goths, and others resided in modern day Holland through Poland and included Germany. Germanic tribes consist of quite a number of tribes. You have the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Slavs, also the Ostrogoths. There's a lot going on with the Germanic tribes. Let me get a drink of water. Hold on. It was common at this time in medieval German society to have marriage by abduction as a result of war, and marriage through an exchange of brides and grooms for important alliances. These marriages were non monogamous for men only. These marriages were non monogamous for men only. The inequality and double standards upheld for married men negatively impacted women and children. And that's going to pretty much wrap that up. Let me go to that site and make sure there wasn't something else I wanted to pull right quick. But while I'm looking for that, well, let me read this. Mm, I'll read this part right here. Although romantic relationships, marriage, and partnering is complicated and unique to every individual, how humans find, create, and maintain healthy and happy relationships have more in common than one might realize. How we partner is often a product of our childhood. However, as evolved as we think we are in comparison to our ancestors, we largely create relationships in the same way they did. Consequently, when we dig a little deeper, we learn that inheritance or paternity, economics, politics, and then religion influenced humans move away from fluid relationships with multiple partners and complex kinship toward monogamy. I'm going to read that one more time because that's a powerful paragraph. Consequently, when we dig a little deeper, we learn that inheritance or paternity, economics, politics, and then religion influenced humans move away from fluid relationships with multiple partners and complex kinship toward monogamy. Man. So that's the aspect of it's not just about religion, and I think it depends on what region and what culture you're talking about. I think that when we talk about melanated culture, a lot of us might argue that religion is the dominated aspect of indoctrination, but it doesn't matter. What she outlined that very well: inheritance, paternity, economics, politics, then religion. Like all these things caused people to move away from fluid relationships, and that is really the principle of this episode. You know what I mean? That's the principle of this episode. Like what has made us monogamous, right? Excuse me. Yeah, yeah. How were we conditioned that way? Where did it start? When did it start? And where are we today? And within that principle, you see that it wasn't always like this. Going back to the title of this episode being that indigenous native people, they practice companionships a lot differently. And it was a variety of ways they practiced it too. I haven't even touched on the surface of how many types of companionships there are. I'm sure there's some that we don't even just know of, that there's just not a label of yet. You know, I just recently learned that they had titles for like different forms of poly, like metamor and solo poly and polymono, which is multi monogamous, basically, amorous. Like, I mean, there's so many names. Triad, quadruple. Swinging has been around for a long time. We have all these labels for things that have been around for a long time. People have practiced various styles of companionship for a long time, and it was okay. It was okay in a lot of tribes. Again, I'm just talking about the pros. I'm not talking about the immoral aspects of companionships that some tribes may have practiced. I'm not covering that. I'm covering the pros, right? So I hope you learned something today. Let me make sure I was done with that. I want to make sure because, yeah, I am done with that. Yeah, I'm done with that. And again, that was coming out of Cultures Mag with no E, CULTURSMAG.com. Yeah, and a lot of that was let me read what Kim Tallbear says. Now, Kim Tallbear, again, she's renowned. She's a researcher, professor, speaker, and author. She says, I often just focus on settler colonialism as a structure and don't worry about who's a settler and who's not. The reason that I avoid worrying about who's a settler and who's not is because we can all be complicit in upholding colonialism. That's true. That's very true. Kim Tallbear, Dr. Tallbear, rather, is not alone in this hypothesis. Her findings are shared by an article in the National Institute of Health. I didn't even click on that. I didn't even click on that. But let me read a little bit more. Different societies have evolved diverse sets of norms that regulate pair bonds. Such marriage norms influence people's long term pair bonds and thus their mating choices. Being married comes with economic, social, and sexual expectations, prescriptions, and prohibitions for both parties, who are accordingly evaluated formally or informally by their community. Marriage norms govern such areas as who can marry whom, pays for the marriage ritual, gets the children in the event of death, and is a legitimate heir and can inherit property titles. Now, if you go back to, and yeah, we'll be done with that. If you go back to my other episode regarding the inception, the origins of polyamory and polygamy, or rather the concepts of polyamory and polygamy, because those words are very modern terms, but the concepts of polyamory, polygamy, or polyamory in particular, is ancient. It's about as ancient as dirt. um, Concepts of polygamy, as far as the institution of marriage, again, go to the podcast. I'm not going to get started on that. But the point I'm trying to make, though, is one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of the reasons why you have the benefits of marriage and why it's expected of you to be married is because in this system that has been created for us, in this system, the system of colonialism, the system of capitalism, the system of Germanic tribes, the system of Rome, in this system that we live in, it is of benefit for you to be married because there's benefits that come along with being married as opposed to just being polyamorous. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't like it, but I do understand why there's a need or a desire to be married in this system. The issue is, one of the issues is a lot of us don't connect to this system. Therefore, we don't connect to the art and style of companionship within this system. So we move in an anti-systematic way, anti-colonialism, anti-capitalism, anti-Rome, and that puts you in a position to not get and receive the benefits that one would get if they were married. Now, again, this is a episode for a whole nother day because I really want to talk to this individual in particular that's really talked extensively about this stuff. Nevertheless, you can see like why a statement, a sentence like that, you can see why it would make sense for some people to be married based upon the benefits that come along with that. So I get it. I get it. But what I don't get though is this European contact. It's crazy. It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of Multi Monogamous, the Poly Galaxy. I hope you've been not necessarily entertained, but I hope that you've been educated and learned something. And again, I'm not encouraging you to take what I've said and run with it. Don't go just popping off at the mouth and telling people this is what you know now, whatever, again, do your own research and make sure you cite your own sources or the sources I gave you as your sources. Nevertheless, if it resonates with you, take pieces of it and apply it to your journey, apply it to your reality, apply it to your engagements and the mutual and consensual um, contracts that you have with people in your reality, whether it be companionships, whether it be friends, whether it be family. We're all just here to learn and grow and evolve beyond all this, beyond this realm, beyond this galaxy. Okay, so hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, Cash App El Rico Ramon, ELRECO RAMON, 100, $200 is great. I'm being confident. If you don't got that much, buy the book then. The book is awesome. The book will give you a sliver of some of that I just discussed today. It's going to give you a piece of that, all right? So again, that book is Multi Monogamous, 3 Ex-Fiancés Later, and that's on Amazon, all right? I hope you enjoyed the feast. I feasted. I hope you feasted too. I know you didn't feast on what I feasted on regarding the miso soup, but you did feast. You did feast on this episode, on this lecture. You ate, and you should be full, satiated. Is that a word? That's a word, right? All right, y'all. Peace, y'all. Take care. Enjoy yourselves, and peace and light. Talk to you later. How I end this? This is how we end this. Okay, end this right here. End.